Hello, everyone. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. And you will see on the screen, welcome, everybody. You'll see on the screen that I've entitled this, What AI Can't Do. So let's have a little fun with this. And if you want to go ahead and just drop in the chat what you think AI can't do while we're waiting, and then we'll get started. So what do you think AI can't do? I know what AI can't do for me is really help me with my clients on a deeper level. So what can't AI do for you? AI does a lot of good things for me, but it's not able to help me with my clients on a deeper level. So we could start with that. You could just, as you're joining, you could drop that in the chat. Personal connections. No, cannot help you with personal connections. It might be able to help you with a roadmap to create personal connections, but it can't help you maintain those personal connections. Absolutely not. What else? Anybody else have anything that AI cannot do? Create deep conversations. No, it cannot. And that's an interesting one because people think it can help you create deep conversations, but it does not help you create deep conversations. Resolve conflict. No, Jennifer, right. It does not help you resolve conflict. And again, it could give you frameworks that could help you resolve conflict, but it won't help you resolve conflict in an effective way. All right. For those of you that are just joining, we got started just a tad early. So go ahead and, like I said, I've entitled this What AI Can't Do. So if you want to, in the chat, just say what you think AI can't do. And we're sharing, there's a couple in here already, personal connections, creating deep conversations, resolving conflict. What else can't AI do for you? And I was giving an example of, yes, embodied cognition. It cannot do that. And Professor Luckman, thank you for that one. That's a good one. That's a big, deep one. So let's get started. I see some familiar faces. Hello, everyone. I wish I could do this as a Zoom meeting. I usually do these as a Zoom meeting, but it's much easier to do it in a webinar. I can stay here in my lane a little bit more. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go with it, and we're going to do a lot of chats, and we're going to do a lot of interaction. So if you could go ahead and get out a journal or something to write with, pen and paper. I'm going to treat this like we are doing like a regular gathering in a Zoom meeting. Okay. So what are we going to cover today? So I'm going to go on and off screen so everybody can see. So today we are going to talk about what AI can do, can't do, and how do we thrive in this age. We are in an entirely different age right now. And then what I'm going to provide you with is one framework, just one framework that we could all use to be able to thrive in this age, which is very, very difficult. I think, I know for me, if for those of you on the newsletter, I talked about that this week, like, because I've been going back and reading Navigating a Surface World, chapter 5 of Leading Below the Surface, because I do feel like the world's getting more and more surface. Like you look around and everybody's saying the same things and everybody's writing the same way and everybody's trying to coach and lead in the same way based on AI. And guess what? That's a big mistake. So we're going to talk about that, why this is important, and then we're going to get into a framework that is a fan favorite. You're going to love this framework. So make sure that you have a pen and a pad out because so you can really use this framework and get really deep in it. So before we get started, I'm going to introduce myself. Most of you know me. I'm Latonya.Wilkins. I'm going to go ahead and share this slide for those of you who may not know me. But these are my multiple titles. As you see, I don't have my business titles on here. One of the things I like to call myself is a grounded optimist because I always have hope for the world. And I think I also have hope that we are going to make it through this AI age even more human, even more grounded, even more deeper. One of my discoveries in life is I'm a mentor coach for the International Coaching Federation. I help coaches get their ACC and PCC credentials. And one of the things that I've noticed while I'm coaching mentor coaching is that leadership competencies and coaching competencies are basically one and the same. I'm going to say that again. Leadership competencies, and you should write this down in that journal that you have. Leadership competencies and coaching competencies are the same thing. So, what is the disconnect here? Why are we not understanding that? And again, this has to do also with leadership. Like, why can't leaders understand that leadership competencies and coaching competencies are the same thing? I did a podcast yesterday with Catherine Lord, who is the head of membership for coaching and organizations for the International Coaching Federation. And we were talking a lot about this, how these competencies are one and the same, what we're getting wrong about AI, what can we do next? How can we help? How can we make ourselves stand out? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And for those of you just joining, um, if you want to drop in chat what AI can't. Hi, Catherine, you're here. Yes. And then we will get started. Hey, Paige. Yeah. AI cannot create belonging. If you feel like you belong with a computer, I think that's another conversation. Humans have the need to belong. Again, humans have an innate need to belong. Okay, so let's get into the framework that we are going to talk about today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So when you hear the word identity, what comes up for you? And drop that in chat. When you hear the word identity, and this is what we're going to get into today, drop that in chat. Like what do you think of? So I know in my work, when I hear this word, or when my clients hear this word, they go to visible characteristics, right? Race, gender, surface, what I call surface, things that you see on the outside, assumptions that you make when you see someone. Multifaceted, yes, Ronit, that's a good one. It's layered, multifaceted. Value, identity, the uniqueness, yes, Elizabeth, uniqueness. So we're going to get into that. But what is this? Who am I? Yes, drive. I love this. So this group, most of you are below the surface already. So this is great. I love seeing this because you're seeing that it goes beyond some of like the things that are surface, right? The things that are surface can be part of your identity, right? But it's so much more. And fact here, there have been studies that have been done that say that leaders who have a better sense of identity, as that sense of identity goes up, what are they able to do? They're able to create more trust. They work better under pressure. They're more resilient. Why do you think this is? Well, because they're more confident in their skin. And what if today, just from this hour together, I could get you one step closer to your identity? And again, I'm not talking about identity, again, what you see on the surface. I'm talking about your deeper identity and how that relates to being able to connect with others. In my book, I talk about self-authorship. And this is a concept that many of us already know about, but it's being able to understand what your identity is and what that means for how you coach, what that means for how you lead. And it's funny because a lot of times people think like, oh, this is like a vanity thing. No, actually, when people get in touch with their identity, and just me seeing this with the folks that I coach, the folks that are in some of my programs, like I see their businesses expand. I see their leadership expand because they know who they are. They're able to help their clients see who they are, and then they're able to connect better. So all of this happens basically in sequence. So if anything else is coming up around identity, drop it in the chat. But I want to move to the next question. So now that we know what identity is and we know what the essence of that is for us, what do people consistently get wrong about you? Let's have a little fun about this. Like, what do people consistently get wrong about you? And we're going to get into other things later about your identity. But I will tell you that when I walk into a room, especially when I'm doing a keynote and I'm in a big group of people and they see me walk in the room, they make a lot of assumptions about me. And I think the biggest assumption that people make is my background, like how I grew up, where I grew up. So most people don't know this because they don't even give me an opportunity to talk about this, or they don't even ask about this. But it's what they guess is that, oh, I must be from like Chicago because I've been living here a long time. I must be from an urban area. But guess what, folks? I grew up in a very small town. Some of you know this. Some of you may not. My father was very blue collar. He worked in a meat packing plant. That's what my that's what my dad did. He was blue collar. He worked in manufacturing. And so I grew up with this different view of work ethic. With everything that is going on in our world today, like, and when I'm seeing everything happening, and I'm seeing what's happening to manufacturing, what's happening to rural areas, that actually I keep an eye on that because that is something that I relate to because that's how I grew up. That's what I know. And the ideals that come with that, that's what I grew up with. That's what I know. In my town, people didn't have to get college degrees. They weren't expected to get college degrees. They could just get jobs, and it was fine, and they could support a family. And that's so different from today. So that's a key identity that I have that I think people miss. So what about you? And if you don't feel comfortable putting this in the chat, jot it down. That's why I have everybody, and that's why I had everybody pull out this notebook. But really think about this. Like when you walk into a room, what do people consistently miss? Because if it's left at the door, then there's less that you could bring into the room. And when I think about this, when I'm doing a talk, for example, and people are making this, I actually bring it to the surface, right? Because I know that's what they're thinking. And sometimes people will even laugh out of an embarrassment, right? Or discomfort because they're like, wait, I did make that assumption about you. Again, this is important because whether you're a leader, a coach, an aspiring coach, or you just want to have better relationships, the minute you walk into a room, someone's already making assumptions about identity. Because, and again, identity, before we move on to the next topic here, identity is deep, it's multifaceted. And so if someone's making these assumptions and it's surface, what's going to happen with that? Well, you're not going to be able to lead well. You're not going to be able to coach well. You're not going to help them be able to connect with themselves well. Because a lot of times, especially if you're trying to use AI just for leadership and coaching, and as Catherine and I were talking about yesterday, Catherine, because I love this nugget, AI is a technology. And if you keep trying to use this, you are going to keep them at the surface and you're not going to be able to consistently be a coach or really be a leader as well. So, okay. So thank you, Elizabeth. I'm gonna come back to that. But yes, people make assumptions. There's another level. So that again, that's not just surface. That's a role level assumption, right? That you're a professor and professors look a certain way, right? They do a certain thing, and nobody knows you. You must look young. Yeah. I wrote about that this week. Like when I ran into one of my students at Pride Parade, and like I guess that's not what a professor should look like, right? So again, more power to her. I'm not judging. This is just what happens. I just teach people about human behavior and psychology and how people think. And we need to know these things, that this is what people are thinking. Because if we can capture this, imagine how much better we can lead, coach, and connect. So one of my favorite metaphors that I talk about is identity, thinking of identity as stairs, and jot this down in your journal. So how many of you are always told about elevator pitches? Like maybe some of you have started businesses, or some of you, I know some of you are looking for jobs out here. And there's always an elevator pitch. Sum yourself up in 15 minutes, or 5 minutes. Sum yourself up. Like you got to hurry up. We're going to make we're going to scan you and make our mind up in 3 seconds, right? And there's been research that people make up their mind about you in 3 seconds or less. I talk about this in my book. How surface is that? And so when I talk about an elevator pitch or elevators as identity, so basically, when you are doing an elevator pitch, you are putting your entire identity into an elevator, right? This small space, and it's a space that is electric, right? There's no work. You're basically just going up the floors, right? And if you need that accessibility, great. But what if we thought about this as taking the stairs, right? Instead of when you think about your identity, your team's identities, your client's identities, maybe you instead of thinking of it as an elevator, you take the stairs. And there's one of the identities that I coach a lot on, where there's two. I want to give you two. Number one are executives that are promoted to the C-suite or just under the C-suite for the first time. Like when we think about identity, that is not just how they look. That's who am I as a leader? What does this look like? How do I want to respond to people? How do I want to connect with people? What do I want to be known for? That's what that is, right? And yeah, it's funny because these are things that when you walk into like a CEO's office and you're asking for like how you're going to be measured as a leader, they're not going to say that. They're going to say, oh, the number of people that leave, like the number of people, like how engaged people are. Yes, like qualitative data, but that all comes back to identity. Again, that all comes back to identity. There is a book, and I still cite this book because it was so good. Elizabeth, you'll probably know this one, but I think it was written in like the 90s, and it's called The Leadership Pipeline. And it talks about the different turns you have to make in leadership. And you have to change three things: how you use your time, what you value, and your skills. And again, how you use your time, what you value, and your skills. Which of those three do you think is the hardest transition to make? Again, how do you use your time, what you value, and your skills? And I think this is also good for coaches or aspiring coaches. Which one of these do you think is hardest? Time, value, or skills? Values or skills? What do you think? Drop it in chat, y'all. This is a smart group. Yeah, Paige, you're right. What you value. So this isn't just like personal values. It's okay, now that I'm a leader, do I value, you know, coaching people as much as I value perfecting a task, right? Do I value, spending all my time with my team as opposed to spending time by myself? And a lot of times when people are promoted into these positions, they don't value these things. But the question is, can you switch? Can you transform and start appreciating those things? And that is the number one indicator of whether or not you will be successful. And so think about that. As you're thinking about your own identity, what have you worked on the most? Have you worked on how you spend your time? Like, what do you value? Like, what does that look like? Or your skill set? So, example for me, I started off as a coach, like a single coach, and now I run an entire firm. So I had to think about my values. And gosh, I have to value leading a team. I have to value, and I'm like, okay, can I? It was something before I was like, oh, I just want to coach people. I just want to do this. But then you have to kind of have this reckoning with yourself and see if you can value other things. That's the first question for all of you. Again, write that down: time, values, and skills. And think about your own identity. And which of these parts have you worked on? And which of these parts have you not? Okay, now let's talk about KPEs. This is another big favorite. And we're going to get into an identity exercise. So, identity, let's go back. Identity is like taking the stairs. It's not the elevator. So, what's on those stairs? Well, when I talk about identity, I talk about KPEs and I talk about knowledge. So get your pen and paper out. What are KPEs? This is a whole chapter in Leading Below the Surface. Knowledge, perspectives, experiences. Okay. Again, knowledge, perspectives, and experiences. These are the three things that make up identity. Okay. Knowledge. Everybody think about the knowledge that you have. And yes, Jennifer, you could do all three of, I think you're talking about the leadership pipeline, but you're going to get burnt out really quickly. So try to focus on one first. But you just might have a longer journey. But try to focus on one first. Okay. Knowledge. Everybody think about the knowledge that you have. Knowledge. It's, did you have a college education? Did you go to a public school? Did you go to a private school? Do you have a graduate education? What types of schools are those from? Did you pick up a trade? What knowledge do you like? Maybe you have knowledge about music. Maybe you play an instrument. Like it's all of these things. So what kind of knowledge do you have? So when I think about my knowledge, I went to public schools, grew up in a small town, like I said, very small, like grade school, pretty small. Um, and then we moved to different town when I was 10. My parents separated. And so that's going to take me to the next one. So perspective. So I'm going to talk about these two dually. So knowledge, parents separated. Then I ended up going to state school, business school, and then I ended up teaching at many different places. Okay. And some of those places are, really like more elite schools, right? And so that is knowledge, not good or bad. It's not good or bad. It's just the knowledge that I have. Perspectives. So I'm going to get into perspectives because when I moved, my parents separated. I got a different perspective of life. I'm the youngest of four. Um, I was this kid that was living in this small town, and then I had to move to this big town. And it wasn't huge, but it was big for me. And so I had to get a lot of different perspectives. I gained a lot of those. I also, growing up, there weren't a lot of people that looked like me in my school. Yeah, I had a lot of elders around me that looked like me, older versions of me, who were lovely, can I say? And I'm very grateful to have had that because I know how scarce that is today. But a lot of the kids in school didn't look like me. So I had to gain different perspectives early on. So what are some of those perspectives that you have, that you've gained? Again, write these down. And then experiences. When some of the things that I talk about, everybody think about a peak experience, maybe a peak experience that you've had in your life or a memorable experience. Every time I'm coaching someone and I'm bringing them in for the first time, we always talk about this. Like, what are some of the experiences that you've had? Think, and again, it could be a peak experience. I know some of you or for example, living abroad, right? Like that might be a peak experience. That's a whole different experience. And that hits perspectives, right? Um, Maybe you have like I've had experiences of both teaching in classrooms at business schools, like very, good business schools. So I've gotten that experience. I've gotten experience of working in corporate. I've gotten experience of being a leadership development. I've gotten experience personally of, learning to play the piano, like, understanding different languages, like all those things. So think about what your experiences are. Like, how do those look for you? So again, KPEs, knowledge, perspectives, and experiences. It's really good to think about it this way because again, it's a framework that you can use with your clients. You could also use with your team. I actually used it recently with a group of early career folks, and they loved it because, again, they're getting out of these are folks in their 20s, young adults in their 20s. They're getting out of college and they don't know how to talk about their identities. They're just thinking of their identity and how do they fit in to this large organization? And so this is a great framework. Like I haven't had anyone that this didn't work with. So try this when you're going in, ask people to kind of think a little bit about their KPEs. And when they're thinking about their identity, again, it's a little bit more of not an elevator pitch, but these are the stairs. This is kind of hard fought. Okay. All right. I'm going to share a slide. We got some coaching below the surface alums in this crowd. So, and this is, I know all of you will agree that this is one of your favorite frameworks. We had so much discussion when we talk about this framework. So one of the things that we talk about is your identity, thinking about it as a bowl of soup. And one of the favorite things I like to say is, um, do you do you consider yourself like more of a chunky soup or like a bisque or even a broth, right? And nothing is good or bad, right? Like some people have a chunky soup, right? They have a ton of identities. They have like when they think about their KPEs, they they have like multiple items on each list. And some people only have a couple, right? So let's think about your bowl of soup. And some of these examples are surface. So excuse me for that. But if you're thinking about your bowl of soup and your identity being the ingredients going into this bowl and you making this chili or this broth, first of all, think about, do you want a chili? Do you want a chunky soup? Do you want a broth? Do you want a bisque? What do you want? Like, what are you? Are you more of a bisque? I know I'm probably more of a chili person myself. I'm probably going to be making my chili here. So as I'm making my chili, what soup are you making? And so this is where we put our KPEs, right? Is in this bowl of soup. They are the ingredients that make up this bowl of soup. So with my bowl of soup, when I think about the knowledge, perspectives, and experiences, all those things will go into my bowl of soup. My identity as, a blue collar kid, right? My identity as, growing up where a lot of people didn't look like me and having a lot of elders. Um, you know, my identity of my experiences that I've had and the different perspectives that I've been able to gain because of that and that you are all experiencing. So the way that all of you experience me, the reason why you experience me this way is because of the perspectives I've had that I'm able to do this because I've had broad different perspectives. I'm able to bring people into a room and make them feel a certain way because of the perspectives that I had. And all of you can do it too. You can all do it too. It's just understanding the your KPEs and uniquely how you can do that, especially in this age that we're in of AI. Okay, this is just another tool. Um, and again, I just want to show you this quickly so you can see it. But there's all these other things that make up our bowl of soup, right? And I didn't mention all these, and this is like a Corn Fairy thing. So take it or leave it. I help it. It sometimes helps people anchor in something, but all of these things can make up your bowl of soup. Every single one. And so it could be cognitive, like are you neurodivergent, right? Like are you like what type of relationships do you have? Like what's your family status, occupation, society, values, physical, um, gender identity, like all of these things. And the one I really love on here is the relational one. Because this is one that we don't really talk about when we're in community with people or when we're just meeting people for the first time. And I'm not talking about whether or not you're married, right? Or whether or not you have children. Like again, those are things that small talk typically covers, right? I'm talking about the things that like generation, like what is that? How does that make you different? And when I was having this discussion with early careers last week, this was great because they finally felt like their experiences mattered because they're coming into this large company, they're doing this rotational program, and they're thinking, I don't really have a lot to bring. Like even some students came up to me and they said that, or some early careers came up to me and they said that. I don't really have a lot to bring. Yeah, you do. I mean, I think just think about your generation and what you can bring from that and what behaviors that creates and what perspectives. Like all of these younger adults have perspectives that we don't have. But again, you cannot get at that through AI. You cannot get at that through checklists. You can't get at that through frameworks. You can only get at that through real connection. And that real connection involves you being able to interact with someone below the surface, starting with maybe identities. Some of you may be wondering, this is a lot. How do I use this right away? Well, you got to warm up. You got to warm up a little bit. And I think first, do it for yourself. Share what you've learned about yourself and then kind of go into it. So I want to give you an example. I do think there's like, I'm going to come back to the chat. Keep that popping, folks. But I'm going to go into an example of how I've used this bowl of soup. So um, I was recently coaching a client, and I'm going to give you an example of like an extreme because these are usually the most helpful examples. This client was an attorney, and he worked for a very prestigious law firm. And when basically it was one of those situations that his company was like, "Hey, you, we need to hire this person a coach." Okay. And I was kind of assigned to him. I mean, he got to meet me, but it's still kind of for those of you who have coached like that, it's a little, you have to build rapport in a different way. That's different from someone finding you. But leaders, you can relate to this because people just come on your team. You got to figure it out, right? Like they don't get a choice. They work for you or they don't. And there's no picking and choosing who your manager is. So I think this will relate to all of us. So when we had a very specific roadmap, and I won't get into that really specifically here because I want to maintain confidentiality, but very specific roadmap. And it's the typical coaching roadmap, right? Like when people talk about like you got to use your time better, you got to have better relationships, all that stuff. It was kind of like that. And I realized after the first couple meetings that he was going to be very surface, and he wanted a checklist. He thought a checklist was going to be the answer, and that was going to help him be able to have better relationships. And as many of you said earlier, that doesn't work. Like when we were talking about things AI can't do, it cannot build relationships, cannot deepen relationships. And I think that's one of the things that he thought because he was, he's more on the corporate side. So when we got into the third session, I tried something different. And I actually bought in this activity. I bought in this bowl of soup exercise. And I shared about my own bowl of soup. And I shared about, I shared with him the stats I shared with you that leaders who have a good sense of their identity or a higher sense of their identity, they're better at everything. They're better at trust, they're better at relationships, they're better at resilience, all those things. And so we went through this exercise and he did it, right? But it wasn't in depth, but he did it. He did it. And I was just very patient. And I saw that as we moved through, he was getting deeper and deeper. So we made some progress. A couple of specifics without breaking confidentiality. One of the things that I learned about him is we had a similar upbringing. And it's interesting because when you have an upbringing like that, that is very blue collar, that's very manufacturing, and where a lot of people around you don't go to college. And then you're in this amazing firm. Everybody went to Harvard, everybody went to Yale, everybody went to Cornell, whatever. Like, name the Ivy League, fill in the blank. They went there. He did not. But he worked his way, again, blue collar mentality. You work your way up. That is the mentality. You don't need a degree, you don't need a degree, you work your way. Um, and guess what? That really helped him understand what was going on because his identities, he had two clashing. They weren't aligned. There was the corporate lawyer that went to an Ivy League school. Their parents were lawyers. Everybody was a lawyer. They had mentors, they had access, and then there was him, and he didn't have those things. He basically got his dream job, and the odds were stacked against him. And he was having a hard time reconciling with where he was. And it was kind of like, I don't belong here. Do I deserve to be here? I know I do, but sometimes I feel like I don't. That's the identity piece, folks. And so as we work through it, it was more, well, what can you be? If you're not that, what are you? And it wasn't that hard to answer. And I think some of the things he realized is that even the way to be there for his family was in a different way than the rest of the people around him. He also found that everybody wasn't that way. Everybody wasn't Harvard and had everything done for them. But you cannot get to that because if you're operating on the surface and you're assuming. Another example where I see this come up is, again, when we're making assumptions and when I'm coaching clients and they're in this amazing position. Like one time I was coaching a CEO of an org that I just respected for a really long time. And so I kind of got surface and I made a lot of assumptions. And when we went through this exercise, it was, wow, she's just like everybody else, right? Her bowl of soup was similar to the other bowl of soup, the lawyer bowl of soup, right? It always goes back to formative experiences. And again, we don't talk about this stuff enough. And I know with coaching and therapy, they're different things, and therapy's going back, coaching going forward. And at the same time, I think sometimes we get afraid to go there because we think, oh my God, this is like Freudian psychology. It's not. It's like these are it's like thinking back to how that implicates you today and like how that informs every decision you make today. It's not pathology. It's really like behavior trends and alignment and understanding that alignment. I and the last thing I'll say about this, another example of this is I recently came across a trauma coach, and he's great. I had him on my podcast, and he runs a trauma coaching business. And um, he we just really liked each other, and he's like, hey, can I donate a session to you? And I was like, I'm gonna do that. That's weird. And I was like, that sounds like a lot. That sounds really deep. And I was like, I don't need any therapy. And he's like, no, no. I was like, I've been through enough therapy. I don't know if I want to do that right now. And he's like, no, no, no. Like, just hear me out. And I heard him out. And um, he took me through this session, and it was like life changing. And it wasn't therapy. It was, let's go back. It was almost like parts work. And it was like, oh, that part of you. How does that part of you, that 10-year-old part of you show up today? And I recently did a podcast on that. So folks go watch that. We talked about the different parts of ourselves. It's called Why You Are Overfunctioning. You can watch that on YouTube. But we talked about that. And again, it's like, how is that behavior informing? And again, I see that as an identity disconnect. Like these are things that you never aligned. They're like almost like disparate. Like you have all these, like when I think about KPEs, it's like your knowledge is way over here and your perspectives are in another room. And then your experiences are in a different room. And they're all behind walls. And they're like locked up. And nothing is talking to each other. That's what it feels like. That's a metaphor that comes to my mind. So think about that. Think about how can you use this bowl of soup? How can you use this exercise with a team member, with someone you're coaching? And like, where have you maybe not used it that would have been helpful? Think about that. Okay, I'm going to come back to the chat. So you could start, if anybody has any questions or comments, you could start leaving those in the chat. I'm going to start wrapping up. We'll probably wrap up a little early, like 10 minutes, because I always want to wrap these up a little early because I know people have things right after. So, um, so this convo is bringing up tension to what I bring. Yeah, yeah. So it's this is okay, Trisha. Thank you for bringing this up because I think when I see this, it's the disconnect. And again, this isn't a criticism, but I'm seeing that perhaps you might be separating professional versus personal, and yeah, protected personal. And like, but it doesn't have to be 100% aligned. Like people think, oh my gosh, Latonya, I'm not going to bring my whole self every single place. It's not going to be the same self. I don't do that. I don't even do that. But my question for you is, can you align that? How can you align that? So again, they're not locked up in different rooms behind walls, right? Like what does that look like? And again, that's a very surface concept. Like people are like, oh, you're asking me to be the same person in every space. I'm not asking you to do that. That's probably what AI would tell you. Bring your whole self to work. I'm not saying that. I don't say that. It's again, it's what is your identity? Because if you take the stairs, you're going to know what your identity is in all those different places. So yeah, Jennifer, I'm sure it's really late for you. Ed, his name is Lion Goodman. If you go on YouTube, you'll see him on, I think we did a podcast together just a little bit ago. So you'll see him on there. He's great. Good guy too. All right. Okay. So why does all this matter? And I'd love to hear from all of you. Why do you think all this matters? And I'll get into this here in a minute. But why do you think this all matters? So I'm going to pause for a second because that's something that I teach us all to do. I think it matters because it matters more than ever that the first thing I said to all of you was that leadership and coaching competencies are one and the same. The thing I didn't say is that these are the most important things that we need for the future. These are the most important competencies that we need for the future. We are getting into an age where we are inundated with information. Everybody's getting the same information. The information isn't necessarily correct. It's not sentient. It doesn't, the information doesn't have feelings, emotions. Guess what, folks? Humans have feelings and emotions, and there's nothing we can do about that. If you think about this, think about motivation, think about connection. How does that happen? Emotions. Doesn't happen by who has the most data. Connection doesn't happen by who has the most data. Yeah, you might look someone up. I know people preparing for things, you look someone up, you understand as much as you can about them. But the big thing you want to do is connect. And what does that take? Emotional, the human part. Okay. So that's why this all matters now. And that's really why I've been moving further and further in this direction. And that's one of the reasons why I'm dedicating all my time to this because this is the time in the world where we need it the most. And, I've been thinking about like the future of the world and what the role I want to have in that. And I want to still to be more human. I think coaching is the skill of the future. Coaches are the future. If you are a leader, again, leaders and coaches are the same, like competencies. this is what you need for the future. This is how you're going to be able to lead people in the future. Not creating their best AI agent. That's not it. Again, it's all emotions. Um, and I've been actually following this a lot. Like I've been like when I'm on social media, I try not to get into the negative stuff, and because I'm fascinated by what's going on in the world, and in some ways, not with some of the things, but there's like human behavior. So, did anyone follow the Knicks, or even is anyone following the World Cup? Um, Chicago Bears. I'm in Chicago, but that's another example. But when and I'm using sports because, and I know sports, we don't all love sports. And I love music too, and art. But I'm just going to use the sports example because did you everybody see how everyone was brought together with the Knicks? There were there were screens in parks. People were acting like they were best friends. They didn't even know each other. And I'm seeing this more and more. Like we went to the era of COVID and we were like kind of in our offices and we are trying to just survive by ourselves. And then like everybody was trying to just do everything online. And I'm feeling something shift. Is anyone else feeling that? I'm feeling that shift. I'm seeing it. And I'm seeing like we went to the loneliness epidemic. We're still not done with that. But I think people are realizing like, wow, this is like not like I'm realizing I really need to be with people. I need to like I run on emotions. We run on connection. And that's been lacking for so long. And so everybody take a minute and think about like, how do you want to be in this era, in this AI era? Like, what does that look like for you? Um, yeah, so I'm going to go back to the chat here. Yeah, it makes us better leaders. I have this deep sense that human behavior, I'm guessing most of us here. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The human behavior, I mean, we even need us, the humans, to do the change work, transformations. Like, I mean, when we think about even change management, emotions are the biggest part of that. So, all right. So if you have a question or any other comments, drop it in chat. I'm going to get into my last two thoughts. So to summarize today, everyone, I want to challenge you to try this bowl of soup. Couple things to take forward. Identity is complex, it's layered. KPEs make up our bowl of soup. Don't lock them behind separate doors. Let them talk to each other. I don't know, maybe that can be, instead of an AI agent, maybe it could be the human agent that helps these things talk to each other. What does that look like? Um, what AI doesn't know, we talked about that, or it can't do. It can't create a bowl of soup. It can't create your bowl of soup. It can't, the examples I gave you with clients, it cannot do that. It can't hold up a mirror. It can't champion someone. I know I use AI quite a bit. I guess I'm a moderate user. I know there's a lot people that do, I don't do agents and all that. But even I can see that there are limitations. And that's one of the reasons why I use it a lot. Because I'm like, oh, what can it do? What can it do? And after a while, it can't do this stuff. What it can do for coaches can help us with development planning, our clients. I've actually even been thinking about creating something like that where our assessment can, you could throw assessment results in AI and it can tell, like a year from now, it can give you like development items, like all that stuff. That's good, but it can't connect. It can't do that. It can't do change. It can't make your org more efficient because again, you need humans to do that. Humans have to create the change. Emotions have to create the change. So thank you everyone for joining me. Before we go, I want to invite everyone, let's climb these stairs together. So as many of you know, I run a program called Coaching Below the Surface. I also run a community, Below the Surface community, amazing community. I am so grateful to have had that community, especially over the last couple of years. It's been kind of a sanctuary for me. And some of you are here, so thank you for coming. And if you keep showing up, it means that we're doing something right. And so there's a couple of opportunities coming up. And I'd love to, if it's something that you're thinking about and you don't know, let's chat about it. So I'll send everybody an email afterwards. Um, and if you have any questions, let's chat. But if, and it's not even about that. It's like, let's think about this bullet soup. How do we use this identity? I'm also interested in hearing from you. I think when I send you this email, like, I'd love to hear how you're going to use this today, um, and how your conversation also goes. So I'm going to stop there. It's really good to see everyone. I wish I could see your faces. Again, we're doing this a little bit differently, but I think it worked pretty well. I don't know what all of you think. I can't see your notebooks, so I can't see if you actually wrote anything down. But I'm thinking this group's a pretty dedicated, good group. And so thank you everyone for showing up. If you have any questions, you can drop it in chat. And if not, I'm gonna give you 10 minutes so you could go back to your day. I also want to end a little early so you can reground with these new concepts instead of please don't go back to your inbox right after this. Take these 10 minutes to kind of think about a plan for yourself with identity and how will you use this. All right. Thank you, everyone. I don't see any questions in the chat. I do see comments. And I'll see you at the next one. Thank you very much.